And we are back with another great episode of Liam Picks Fights. Guys, this is the last one of the year in the UFC. UFC Vegas 45 coming at you hot. We've got a heavyweight main event between the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, everybody's favorite underdog, and Chris Daukaus, the dark horse of the heavyweight division, a personal money train for me, a guy who's been lighting up the heavyweight division with very fast hands. It's an exciting matchup. And in order to break it down, I brought on two very smart guys, two guys that I'm excited to break this card down with. Number one, we got John Stargarian, host of the Club and Sub podcast, first time coming on the show. Excited to have John aboard. John, welcome aboard. How you doing tonight, my man?
What's going on, Liam? Thanks for having me on. I'm pretty pumped to get it started with you. I like the little setup you got over there. That's pretty nice. I'm moving into a house in 2 weeks, so hopefully you can get something similar going on. But yeah, I'm pumped to do this.
Appreciate it, boss. Had COVID at the beginning of the year. You get locked down for 10 days with nothing to do. You start ordering posters, designing the studio, and heck, you might even have a show out of nowhere. So we're coming up on a year now, brother, and appreciate you being here for this episode. We're going to close out the year strong with my man Gerald as well from Your Best Bet Sports Data. Gerald has been on the show before. We're very excited to bring him back on once again. So thank you very much, Gerald, for being here. How you doing, buddy?
Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it. I am doing good. I'm glad to get past the Dallas traffic and talk about some fights with you guys.
Absolutely, man. And we've got a pretty good card. Tricky from a betting perspective overall. Not that many closely lined fights here. Some pretty significant favorites throughout the card, but couple of closely lined fights, including in the main event. So there is some interesting stuff to get in here. Before we get cracking, breaking it down, guys, I just want to mention as we get started, the show, all the stuff that I do is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks, very simple way to get involved with daily fantasy. If you don't have, every spreadsheet and every number system going on, and you just want to play for fun, you can pick projections to play against. You don't have to play against the whole field, so makes it for a little bit easier of an experience. You can play across sports. If you want to check it out, all the information you need is in the description box below. You could use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. So appreciate you guys for checking that out. It's an easy way to support the show. And for as little as $20, you can get involved there and they'll match you on your deposit. So appreciate it, guys. We can get cracking now from the bottom of the card to the top. We will kick it off first in the lightweight division. Matt Sayles, featherweight for a lot of his fights. He's going to be bumping up here to the 155-pound division to take on Jourdain Leavitt, coming off of some would say an exposure of a loss to Claudio Puelles, but also, Puelles has kind of proven himself to be a pretty tough grappler in terms of, surprising the grits last time out, costing me some dollars. So I think that, maybe Puelles was a little bit underrated coming into that spot. Maybe Leavitt was a little bit overrated. So now the question is, how does it shake out in this matchup? Closely lined fight. There's already been some market movement. I believe Sayles opened up as an underdog. The action has come in his way, and now it's a pretty even pick'em fight. So excited to hear your guys' takes on this. I'm going to kick it to my man, John, first. How do you feel about this fight?
It's kind of a weird fight, to be honest with you. Like, I've been fairly anti-Leavitt in his time in the UFC. I haven't been impressed with the athleticism. I haven't been impressed with the striking. He puts himself, I don't know. I kind of just felt like when he got up against UFC level grapplers, things were going to go horribly wrong for him. But with that said, what I appreciate about Leavitt is he sticks to his bread and butter. The guy's going to come out there and attempt takedowns. He's not somebody you have to worry about sitting out and point fighting. And on the other side, you have Matt Sayles. And Sayles was a decent prospect a couple of years ago, but then, we haven't heard from him in a couple of years. He apparently blew up to 250 pounds, according to him. Now he's back in shape, but he left Alliance. Look, Sayles is a decent boxer. He's a decent striker. He showed some promise. If he can keep this fight standing, I think he's going to cruise. The problem is, I think Sayles is atrocious on the mat. I thought he was before the Bryce Mitchell fight. Kyle Nelson almost finished him there. He almost got finished regionally a couple times in bad spots on the mat. And so the question is really, who do you trust to implement their game plan more? And I do think Sayles has good first level takedown defense. But my gut is Leavitt's not going to sit there, and if he gets denied, get discouraged, he's going to keep going for it. And so my gut is there's probably some value on Leavitt here. I don't know if I want to bet it just because I don't really think he's a UFC level grappler, but I think he's a good enough submission grappler that if he gets Sayles down, he probably takes his back. And with that being the case, it's hard for me not to leave Leavitt.
I hear what you're saying. Chance Wagers in the comments echoing your sentiments. Leavitt's going to grapple circles around Sayles. I can see the same. Going back, I saw George Hickman, the striking coach, I think it is, or one of them over at Tiger Muay Thai, almost finished him, like you were mentioning, in that fight. And he was able to take the back, rotate some positions. You do see that Sayles, when he's able to get on top, he's not the least competent wrestler. He was able to stay in top position for like 30 seconds or something, but overall doesn't seem very comfortable in the grappling phases of the fight. Kind of gets out scrambled in his own grappling entries at times, including in that Hickman fight. So I think that that's a little bit of cause for concern against somebody like Leavitt, who, the vast majority of his time spent fighting is in grappling scenarios. He forces that equation. And so it didn't work out against Fuelles, who's probably just a little bit better of a grappler. But in this fight, that might work to his benefit. How do you feel about this one, Gerhard?
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of what John said. I do think that I don't rate Jourdain Leavitt's wrestling all that highly, to be completely honest. And I do kind of consider this like, I guess you would say a buy low spot. Like he closed as, I think, a minus 230 favorite over Claudio Puelles, and then he ended up losing. Now we're getting him at pick'em odds, but I always told myself that Jourdain Leavitt was going to be my favorite fadeable fighter if he was a favorite. Now we're getting him at pick'ems, and I'm not too sure if I want to fade him at this number. I think I might play him. I might entertain a submission prop, because then we also have Sayles, who's, he's taking this fight at lightweight, and he hasn't fought here since I think 2017 against Christian Aguilera. He's a featherweight. He's going to be undersized in this fight. I just question Jourdain Leavitt just a little bit. I hope he gets it down to the mat. I hope we see a submission out of him, because I would love to fade him as a favorite, a heavier favorite in his following fight. But I just don't know what version of Sayles we're really going to see. I mean, from what I saw, yeah, he has some decent striking. He mixes it up pretty well. He throws some good low kicks. But again, it's just, he has been submitted before. We don't know what he's going to look like, especially at light heavyweight. And he says that this is just going to be like a pit stop for him. He plans to go back down to featherweight. So I have concerns here. I think at pick'em odds, you got to pick your poison, but I am not the highest Jourdain Leavitt guy, to be completely honest. I might play a prop here as a degenerate.
I hear what you're saying, and I just looked. Jack Attack pointed this out as well. I wish the line on Leavitt sub was better than plus 180. The decision prop is plus 500, which is probably a little bit better at that point. But, does it make it there? That's the real question. I think what's interesting. Oh, please go ahead.
If you're betting decision for Leavitt, you're expecting him to have grappling success. And with how Sayles gives his back, you're going to be sweating that a lot if Leavitt's on pace to win a decision,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hear what you mean. I think it's just to try and get the juicy plus number, but at that point, you might be grasping. I feel you. I think that it's probably a submission spot for Leavitt if he's to get the win here. But I just don't want to count out the fact that for the time that they're on the feet, I do feel like Leavitt is pretty uncomfortable and awkward looking, and Sayles throws a pretty fast one too. And he hits with some decent power, pretty good KO percentage on his career. And so not against the best level of competition, but is he fighting the best level of competition? That's the question here. So I think this is a fight that I'm going to ultimately pass on, or bet the fight doesn't go for a small poke, because I think both guys have a path to finish this fight. I'm curious what that line is looking like.
I would usually say like this is a stay off fight, but I almost feel like if you get a minus 110 line each side, if you have an edge in a certain spot in this fight, go ahead and bite the bait. And that's what made me want to play Leavitt. It's just because of the line that we currently have. But yeah, I don't know. It should be a interesting fight, but not too sure. Either Leavitt by sub or maybe third round finish for Sayles. Don't know.
Doesn't go is minus 165. That's actually not terrible.
Yeah, minus 165, I would consider playing. Up at minus 185, I would probably just pass at that point. But that would be my angle if I was to target one on this fight.
Yeah.
But moving on, we have a heavyweight matchup here. One of the fights that I'm not supremely interested in betting on this card, but perhaps you guys have a stronger read here. Low-level heavyweight fights are not my bread and butter. I kind of leaned towards Sakai last week on volume if he was able to extend it to a decision, and instead he gets absolutely nuclear missiled So just not really a division I have tremendous success in. Dante O'Mays, Josh Parisian. We'll kick it first to John. Do you have strong thoughts one way or the other here?
It's funny because like before I taped it, I was almost certain I was going to be betting Josh Parisian. I place a decent amount of emphasis on statistics, but that being said, tape is probably my number one factor in this stuff. And the stats, Parisian's output is undeniable. He throws a ton. I think he landed over 100 significant strikes against Parker Porter. The problem is when you go and watch him fight, it's like the guy's got no defense at all. Like it's literally non-existent. And so at heavyweight, he's playing a dangerous game and he's begging to get knocked out. And to be honest, like Dante O'Mays, I think he's fairly skilled for a heavyweight. He just doesn't really blend it together well. Like I'll watch him and it's like, once every 3 or so minutes, he'll do something. I'll be like, oh, that was cool. That was interesting. And then it's kind of back to the low volume style. But I mean, Mays is much more skilled than Parisian. Honestly, he's got a huge reach advantage. He's huge. Like I said, Parisian's there to get hit. Mays is a lot more defensively sound. Mays is probably the better grappler. I honestly think he probably should cover his number, but I don't really want to trust Dante Mays at minus 200.
I can understand why. It's really hard to lay serious chalk at heavyweight, in my opinion. I thought Curtis Blades was a good investment against Derrick Lewis, and I think you felt the same way, John. So there you go. I feel like that was when I learned my lesson on that for a long time. How about you, Gerhard? How do you feel about this one?
I have absolutely no feelings on this fight at all. I would say that this is going to be kind of a sloppier style fight. But yeah, I don't really like the numbers. I don't like the values. I think Dante O'Mays gets his hand raised, but I'm not willing to risk minus 200 on him. I don't know. It's a tough fight to break down, but it's one I'm really not interested in. This is a stay away fight.
That makes a lot of sense to me, my man. I don't really have much interest in betting this either. Both these guys are going like blood and guts wars with Roque Martinez. That's basically all you need to know about the fight. It's just not something you want to take a heavy investment in.
If you like Parisian, go ahead and bet it, right? I just don't. It's just so hard for me to see how you can be comfortable trusting a guy at heavyweight who stops punches with his face.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. That just doesn't seem like a long-term plus EV play. Sometimes there is no good bet on a fight, and maybe that's the case with that one. But if you got a stronger lean, go right ahead. But I don't have anything much to offer on that kind of sloppy fight. Raquel Pennington and Macy Chiasson is next up at the women's featherweight division, according to Tapology. I've heard people say both. I think because it's a short notice fight, it is going to be 145. So that's what I'm rolling with here. I'm not sure who that favors necessarily. Probably Macy to an extent. She's a little bit bigger. Probably will limit the amount that she has to cut here. But overall, not sure that that's going to be the supreme difference maker in this fight. I'm going to kick this one over to Gerhard first, just to keep things interesting, mix it up. Gerhard, how do you feel about this matchup? And is this one that you want to target from a betting perspective?
I think with it being at featherweight 145, I think that we're going to see Macy being the bigger girl come fight time. And I am kind of interested in her at dog odds. I'm kind of waiting on the line to explode just a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like featherweight, she's going to be 5'11". She's a gazelle out there. She does have a sharp right. But I worry about her because Rocky is one of the toughest girls to bet against. She's always derailing these hype trains. Who did she beat last time? I can't remember. Was it Penny Kianzad?
Penny Kianzad, and cost me about a half a unit on that one.
Yeah, so it's tough to bet against her, but I feel like featherweight is just going to favor Macy tremendously in this spot. She's already a really big girl. So I would be interested in a spot on Macy Chiasson, but I am wanting a better line. So I'm going to selfishly wait this one out. But yeah, I like the dog shot on Macy, to be completely honest.
That makes sense to me. John, how do you feel about this one?
Well, does anybody know why it got moved to featherweight?
I think it is because it was a short notice replacement. I believe so.
Okay. I guess, I don't know. It's hard for me to feel passionately about it because I feel like on the one hand, it's like you look at the level of competition Rocky Pennington's been fighting and it's just so much higher than what Macy has. But on the other, I felt for some time that Pennington had been slowing down. She looked terrible against Holly Holm. Now, obviously Holly's, quite good, but even since then, you look at her fight with Marion Renault, that was a pretty ugly fight, even though she won. She won after Renault gassed out. You go back a couple fights before that, the Aldana fight. Again, she won, but she didn't look very good. Like, I'd almost liken Pennington to, like, a crafty lefty in baseball, just like some pitcher that throws a lot of junk. Like, she knows what she's good at, and she's very, very fundamentally sound, and she kind of exposes her opponents that way. But I also just think her skills are declining pretty rapidly. On the other hand, you have Macy, who I haven't been the highest on, but Macy's an athlete. She's quite good in the clinch, which is where I think Pennington has traditionally had a big advantage against her opponents. They're up at Macy's weight class. Macy's fought at 45 in the past. Pennington hasn't. And on top of which, it's a little nerve-wracking for me that Pennington got beaten up in the clinch against Panny. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. That fight was just, in general, to me, was very, very weird. Like, I thought Panny would win the boxing all day and Pennington dominate there. But I think it's a pretty bad sign for this fight. But on the other side of things, if Pennington gets on top of her, it's going to be bad news. I guess I'm passing on it. I couldn't bet Pennington at this number, though. I think there's too many unknowns between the weight, between, how she's looked lately, the fact that she got outstruck by Panny Kianzad, a boxer, in the clinch. I understand the poke at Macy, but I'm passing on the fight.
And that makes sense to me as well. I think that if I get to the window here, it's going to be on a Macy bet on the money line. I wouldn't be altogether surprised if that number continues to rise a little bit. I feel like Rocky is the more well-known public quantity here. And so for that reason, maybe she gets included in some of those parlays and things that increase the betting line a little bit closer to fight time. That's something I'm going to be keeping my eye on, certainly. But right now, best available number is plus 162, and the market has been pretty roundly coming down. So I'm hoping that number ticks back up to the plus 175-ish range before I would look to get involved there.
Real quick on that fight, I just want to say, like, I would probably entertain a bet on Rocky if it was a 135 pound fight, but with it being at 145, and I just have a lot of questions, and I don't know. I always try to find a reason to back a dog. So that's my reason. It might be super dumb, but women's MMA, am I right?
No, I think it's a reasonable take. Like, if I was betting it, it would definitely be on Macy,
Absolutely. So next up, guys, we have another featherweight fight. This is going to be in the men's division, and we got Andre Ewell, who's coming up after a pretty brutal KO loss in his most recent outing, and then Charles Jourdain, fresh off of a submission loss against Juicy J, Julian Erosa, his last time out. So both these guys looking to get back on track here. But I honestly have always thought that Charles Jourdain got a little bit more love than he deserved by the betting market and the promoters. I think that the Josh Kulabau fight is my the one that I cling to. I had almost a unit on Kulabau there that pushed, and I think Kulabau has proven that he's not like a complete slouch. He's had a couple other decent performances in the UFC, but he's not like a blow away UFC star either. He's gotten mopped up by the likes of Jalen Turner and stuff. So I think that, Charles Jourdain doesn't strike me as a massive favorite potential here. I think that his style is very loose. He gets hit all the time. He can probably do better damage here than Ewell, but I don't know that he's going to have tremendous cardio here. I don't know that Ewell's cardio is going to look as bad up a weight class as it did at 35. So I kind of like this fight potentially as an underdog shot if I was to play it. I think it's a dog or pass. I would not lay the chalk on Charles Jourdain based on what I've seen. And I got a couple eyeballs in the chat. Chance says that he's on Ewell as well. So love to hear what you guys have to say about this matchup, but we're going to kick it to John next. John, how do you feel about this matchup? You think I'm crazy for thinking Andre Ewell maybe is a dog shot this weekend?
No, I've faded Charles Jourdain at every step of the way, and I'm not going to stop here. Look, one of the bottom line is I'm not trying to insult our Canadian friends, but I think if he wasn't Canadian and there weren't so many Canadians in the MMA Twitter community, he would not be as popular as he is. I don't look. I respect how dynamic Jourdain is as a finisher. He obviously hits very, very hard. I do understand that. But the reality is his process is almost completely broken. The guy's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he hasn't really ever learned how to wrestle. When he does try to grapple, it doesn't look great. He's bad defensively wrestling. And when it comes to offensive striking, he doesn't counter. He lets guys go first on him constantly. You watch Kulabau, who's kind of a worse version of Andre Ewell. He's a left southpaw who's just going to stand there and kind of, let Jourdain pressure him back. And Kulabau was having no problem. And now you look at Andre Ewell, who, look, you can say whatever you want about Ewell. First of all, he was a gigantic bantamweight. He's actually bigger than Jourdain. I think they're the same height. Ewell's got a 6-inch reach advantage. But Ewell's bread and butter is striking. He is a very, very good striker while he's fresh. I think he's going to have pretty limited, not many problems hitting Jourdain here and keeping him on the outside. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage. He manages distance incredibly well. Jourdain is there to be hit, and Ewell is a lot harder to hit. Is the cardio concern? I guess, but even if you look at Ewell's career, look at the fights he's actually slowed down in. It was the Gutierrez fight where he took a ton of attritional damage and also won the second round of that fight, to be honest. And then, the Marlon Vera fight where Chio just puts on an incredibly effective pressure and attritional work again. That's not really Jourdain's game. He'll throw the occasional leg kick, but he is not going to have that kind of intense, pressure-heavy, high-output style that's going to, tax Ewell's gas tank. He went 3 hard rounds and won the 3rd round against Jonathan Martinez with one hand a couple years ago. And I rate Jonathan Martinez a bit more than I do Charles Jourdain. But, the gas tank's a consideration, as is the fact that Jourdain can finish the fight at any time. But ultimately, I don't see how you can get past Pick'em here. Plus 170 seemed like an auto bet for me, so I took the stab at Ewell here.
I love it. Gerhard, do you feel the same way? You going the other way? How do you feel about this? We're getting very funny comments in the chat, by the way, boys.
I remember a time where I was somewhat a Charles Jourdain believer, but then he came off of a win against Marcelo Rojo, and I just remember thinking to myself, man, I can't wait for him to be a favorite so I could fade him, just because I remember seeing some holes in that fight. And then I ended up cashing a ticket on backing Julian Erosa. Now he's a minus 200 favorite. And then also, to add to that fact, Andre Ewell, he's not cutting down to 135 anymore. I feel like this is a good move up a weight class for him. And I would consider him a bigger bantamweight as well. And I think he's actually going to be bigger than Charles Jourdain for this fight. I have to look at the numbers and stuff, but I do think he will be bigger. I think Charles Jourdain welcomes firefights a little too much. And I think that's going to be his downfall. Is he wants to get into these battles, and it hasn't worked out for him. And I don't think it's going to work out for him against Andre Ewell. I like Andre Ewell at these odds, and I'm tempted to take him. I think he can knock out Charles Jourdain. I was surprised when I saw these odds, to be completely honest. I would expect it to be a little bit closer. So I'll go with Andre Ewell.
I think it's just the MMA math, man, and the fact that he's coming off of a really bad KO loss, and the guy who beat him just got knocked out by Song Yadong. I really think that is stifling market expectation a little bit.
Well, what is Jourdain's best win? I don't have it in. Let's see. He hasn't really looked great. Exactly, and it's he looked okay in the Feely fight because he dropped him, but he lost. I don't know. I don't really understand the Charles Jourdain love. He went life and death with Kulabau. As you said, Duo Choi is his best win. I agree with you, Gerhard. I thought the Rojo fight, Rojo is a fringe UFC fighter, and Rojo won the first round clean and probably would have won the fight if he didn't gas out. So, I don't know. This line's pretty odd to me.
And not to say that Andre Ewell is the lock of the week or something. Is Andre always on the brink of mental collapse in a fight that he's doing well in? Yeah, for sure. But it's still, it's not we're getting 50-50 odds here. We're getting plus money on a guy who is going to probably win the first round, or if not win the first round, be very competitive in the first two. It's I like those odds on an underdog at this price. Gerhard,
Andre Ewell, he's one of those guys that is he looks good until he doesn't. He just slows down. But I feel a lot of that had to do with him cutting all that weight. There was an interview of him saying where he was throwing up to make 135. That can't be healthy for you. 145 I feel is going to be a good weight class for him. And the odds are just off. I'm going to go with Ewell, but I would say if Jourdain was the underdog here, I would take him. So dog or pass, in my opinion. I'm rolling with the dog.
Sounds like a plan, my man. Next up, we've got a fight that's been dividing the the Twitter community, certainly. We got the Sarge, Sijara Eubanks, one of the better 7 and 6 fighters in MMA, you'd have to think. Certainly for the women's side of the game. Taking on Melissa Gatto here, undefeated, but a couple draws to her name. I believe on the Brazilian regional scene as well. So not altogether an inspiring look, but sometimes the Brazilian women's scene is a little tougher than the Brazilian men's scene. It depends. But I think that this is an interesting fight for me. I've heard a lot of takes that Gatto, is live to find a submission here. I do find that a little bit challenging unless Sijara has like a death gas situation, which I think is possible given the weight class. But I don't know. I feel like Sarge looks pretty good and pretty comfortable in the weight in recent fights. So I'm at least interested to hear what you guys have to say before I plant a flag on this one. But I feel like the line movement has been interesting here. How do you feel about this one, John?
Yeah, I'll plant the flag. I think Eubanks is going to kick the shit out of her, to be honest with you. I think this line is fucking crazy, if I'm being completely honest. Like, when I heard the fight was announced, I was expecting you'd see Eubanks chalked up at like minus 300, minus 400 range. I was shocked when it was minus 225, and I was thinking of playing Eubanks there, and now we're getting down to minus 150 here. I don't understand it. I mean, let's just go back one fight. Melissa Gatto was lined at evens with Victoria Leonardo, and people were lining up to bet Victoria Leonardo. She had a competitive first round with her and then broke her arm, and even the second round was moderately competitive. Like, Leonardo landed almost 50% of her standing strikes and held her down, and Gatto accepted bottom. And now we're going from even money against Victoria Leonardo to Sijara Eubanks only being minus 150. I mean, look at the girl Sijara Eubanks has fought and beaten. Like, this is crazy. Like, you want to talk about the grappling? I agree with you, Liam. Sijara Eubanks literally won a gold medal at the World Championships of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 2015. Like, she is a top-level grappler. She's an excellent wrestler. I think anytime she hits a takedown, it's going to be around here. And even on the feet, I keep hearing about Gatto's boxing because of how it looked last fight. Like I said, she was getting hit by Leonardo. Victoria Leonardo is one of the most defensively void fighters in the history of the promotion. That she was getting lit up by Melissa Gatto should come as no surprise to anybody. Sijara Eubanks outstruck Ketlin Vieira on the feet. She had a competitive time on the feet with Pani Kianzad, and this is up a weight class. And now, she's going to get outstruck by Melissa Gatto? I really don't think so. And even the cardio stuff, at 125 in the UFC, she's never lost a round in 3 fights. She didn't lose a round on The Ultimate Fighter at 125. And even at 35, she's won a number of round 3s. She won round 3 against Julia Avila. She won round 3 against Ketlin Vieira. She won round 3 against Aspen Ladd, a strong cardio fighter. I don't know. I think people still remember the Betch fight, and for whatever reason, the market doesn't like Sarge, but she's legitimately a very good MMA fighter, and I think Melissa Gatto is a fringe UFC fighter. I think Sarge should be closer to like minus 300 here, so I like her a lot in this spot.
All of that makes sense to me. I also just want to acknowledge up front, though, I'm horrible at betting women's MMA, historically speaking, and I think sometimes I overrate skills in women's MMA, and then the physicality difference is significant. But Sarge is also pretty damn physical, and that's what makes me think it's like, if you've got somebody who is a very submission-oriented fighter, which is how I view Gatto in terms of her grappling, Sarge is like criticized for being positional, but that is like what you would want in the pairing of the two. Somebody who's submission oriented against somebody who's trying to strike or somebody who doesn't want to grapple, that's fantastic. Like, that's what Derrick Mitter exploits. But then when you get in there with somebody who's like a little bit more positionally sound, like Ryan Hall, they're going to find their way through positions. I kind of feel a little bit the same way about this fight. But again, my concern would just be the big age gap. That's what I would be a little bit afraid betting into. But I see all the points that you're making, John. Gerhard, how do you feel about this one?
I am going to wait. I'm interested in betting Sijara Eubanks, but I'm seeing a lot of dog love coming in on Melissa Gatto, and I don't mean to, piggyback off of everything you guys are saying, but Melissa Gatto, she accepts bottom position a little too often, and I don't know that that's going to be her best bet in this fight against Sijara Eubanks, who is a pretty high-level wrestler. She is the best 7 and 6 fighter in the UFC. I'll just say that, and my only concerns, age gap. And then again, she's cutting down to 125 for this fight, which I think this is only her second fight that she's done that, or at least since like 2018. I can't remember the exact dates. But Yeah, I'm interested in a bet on Sijara Eubanks. I love how the line is kind of closing up a little bit. I agree with the opening line more than I do the current line.
Awesome. And that all makes sense to me. So I think that, we basically covered that fight. I think Gatto, some smart people in the chat, a lot of people I respect taking the dog shot here. And I can understand if you're on it at big plus money, but I'm not going to be going that way this week. I'm gonna be taking Sarge, or I'm gonna be passing on the fight overall here. I haven't decided.
Don't take the dog shot. Don't take the dog shot. You won't regret it. I am telling you. I never say that. All I bet is dogs. Like this is,
I feel you, brother. I feel if John doesn't want in on a dog, I will say that bears some credence with me. I know he's always looking for one like I am. That's why I got the odds mug here today. Shout out to Z's MMA. That will be in the description box below the video as well. So, guys, moving right along, talking about low-level MMA in the heavyweight division. We've got more of it, as if you needed more. Justin Tafa, bad man, literally and metaphorically. No, I'm kidding. Justin Tafa, tough guy. A lot of people seem to like him. Harry Hunsucker, not a very talented fighter, but, some finishing upside. Just seems a little bit underprepared for the UFC level. Basically a one-round fighter so far in his professional career. So interested to see how you guys shake out on this one. But again, talking about a fight where I look around and don't see investments I want to make, it would be both of these guys as pretty hard for me to invest in with a substantial amount of money. John, how do you feel about this one? You're on mute, my friend.
I mean, you pretty much summed it up nicely. I don't have very many strong feelings about this fight. I don't rate Justin Tafa really at all, but he throws hard and he throws a lot. And Harry Hunsucker, again, is one of the worst fighters in UFC history. I guess if you were to force me to make a bet, I'd throw some lunch money on Harry Hunsucker because it's super low level heavyweight. And you never know what can happen. But I don't think Tafa should have too many problems here. Hunsucker has 2 minutes of gas, so unless he puts him out in the first 2 minutes, Tafa is probably going to finish him. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
That all makes sense to me. Gerald, do you feel kind of the same way? A lot of people seem to think that Harry Hunsucker basically has a 3-minute window to win this fight. But for me, that's not, outside the realm here. I feel like they're both just going to swing with their chin on a platter until somebody's snoring.
Yeah, this one's interesting. First of all, I just want to say, in no world would I have Justin Tafa being a minus 340 favorite. But with that being said, I'm also not very interested in taking the dog shot on Harry Hunsucker. But honestly, if it keeps getting wider, I just might. Like, you just kind of have to at that point. This is way too low level for me to actually be interested in. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to feel about this fight. I think Tafa gets it done, but damn, that is an ugly price tag. I'm not betting this fight right now.
That all makes sense to me. And last thing we say, Chad says Tafa going to kill him. He may literally kill him. He throws hard, and that is all he should need. Also has the cardio to go more than 2 minutes, which is more than Hunsucker has. I think that's a fair reason for why Tafa is such a big favorite. But betting on somebody with like a one-path contingency to the win is not really something I'm interested in either. I don't think Tafa's like going to pull out some wrestling and grappling we've never seen before. And I just feel like this is a pretty unidimensional fight where there's a lot of variance at heavyweight, and it doesn't really make sense to bet into minus 340 favorites that are 4-3, most especially. So we can move right along to a much more interesting fight. Victor Henry, haven't finished the full tape on this guy. Sort of announced on short notice here, filling in, taking on Raoni Barcelos, basically like the hardcore MMA's king of the 135-pound division. And I get it. He's a lot of fun. Packs power in his hands. Pretty interesting style, clever, crafty. Likes to move, can crack. But he's kind of just like aging out of his prime. The UFC sometimes does this if they find like a mid-age Brazilian, where they'll just try and run them out on the clock by giving them unranked opponents on prelim cards that nobody's watching until they're completely out of their prime and start losing, a la Leo Santos. So I think that might be the road that we're on with Raoni Barcelos here, where they're trying to just shove him off on these undercards until he ages out of the sport. But I think he's still a treat to watch. I thought the Valiev fight, he still gave a good account of himself. Valiev's kind of hard to look good against. if you don't kill him, because Valiev throws a metric shit ton of volume. So I think that, Barcelos tried to nuke him and like had him pretty close and spent the gas and couldn't get it back because he's a little bit older. I feel like his recovery is not going to be there. If he looks for the finish here, that could be to his detriment. I think Henry's got to survive and try and pick him off late. He's got to try and eke out a decision close here on volume and not getting cracked too hard. But I think overall, Barcelos, if he tries to pursue the grappling here, I think he'll be able to get some top position and bail himself out of some tough spots. But, this is just, I really would be more inclined to take a dog shot if it wasn't on short notice. But short notice debutants have had like really, really poor levels of success in the UFC, especially if they're not winning by knockout. So I think that Barcelos is probably going to take this one. John, how do you feel?
Yeah, I actually, again, rare chalk shot that I took here, but I actually bet Barcelos at minus 290 here. I just don't really see a whole lot of outs for Victor Henry in this fight. He's a pretty poor grappler. He's pretty easy to put on his back. He's pretty easy to hold down if you know what you're doing, which Barcelos does. Obviously, Barcelos is quite a good wrestler himself. Henry's boxing is quite poor as well. Defensively, he's susceptible. I don't think he has the best gas tank. And again, on the other side of things, you have Barcelos, who is an elite boxer with elite hand speed and who hits pretty hard. And then, look, I don't want to only shit on Henry. He's actually a fairly experienced fighter. I believe he's got like 25 pro fights, and he actually does some cool stuff. He's a pretty good kicker. I would have liked to see them put him against a guy who, a low-level guy who's exciting. I think it would be interesting. But I think he's up against it here. Barcelos doesn't have Barcelos has better cardio in this fight. He's got better hands. He's a much better grappler. I really struggle to see where Henry can have success. Yes, once upon a time he beat Kyler Phillips, but Kyler Phillips gassed out in that fight after a round, as he's wont to do. So again, I didn't really take much from it. I think Barcelos should be up around minus 500 here, to be completely honest with you. So I think he's going to cruise.
That all makes sense to me. I do think, Victor does have a sneaky resume. It's just like, who do you get matched up with? It's like, even looking back, Anderson dos Santos, not a bad win. Split fights with Dennis Latour. I'm not even going to try and butcher that Eastern European sounding name, but I feel like he's actually fought a decent level of competition too, despite being over in Japan on the regionals. But I just think that it's like, out from the frying pan into the fire, just gets put in with a very tough matchup. Gerald, how do you feel about this one?
This is actually going to be a fun fight to watch. I do think that we're going to see moments of success from Victor Henry. I like his kicking game. I like his boxing. He is pretty wild at times. He leaves his hands low. We've seen him put on his back before. I was watching his Kyler Phillips fight, and he was put on his back early in round one. Kyler Phillips just gassed out a little faster than Victor Henry did. So he ended up coming out with the decision win in that one. But Raoni Barcelos, he comes off this really interesting fight against Timur Valiev. And I watched this without commentary, and I actually did score it for Valiev. He was just a little bit more active. And while Barcelos hits a lot harder and knocked him down, it was just interesting because I feel like Victor Henry can almost present similar issues, but I feel like Barcelos on the flip side has to know this, I feel like just get him down on the mat because we know that his takedown defense isn't that the greatest, but I don't know. I wouldn't widen the line anymore. I feel like this is going to be an interesting fight from a fan's perspective. I don't know that I'm going to bet it just yet, but I think it's going to be, I think it'll be a close fight for as long as it stays standing.
That all makes sense to me too. So we're kind of expecting fireworks here. John has the most conviction certainly on a side. I just have to get a little bit more acquainted with Victor Henry. I was able to do a little brief scan, but I'd like to go deeper before I was to take a shot for or against. But we got one of my favorite fighters in the UFC up next on the card. Doesn't mean I'm going to be backing him here. Gerald Meerschaert, GM3. Last time out, cashed me a pretty sizable underdog play inside the distance, like plus 550 against Makhmud Muradov. And that was a pretty fun night watching that one live at the casino. I was the only one going crazy. I could tell you a lot of people were not very happy with that result for their parlays and whatever else they had going on. But GM3 shocked the world. I feel like the guy is a heck of a lot of fun. I felt like his striking was what was slept on going into the last matchup. Everybody knew that he had the better submission game, but they were expecting him to just get fucked up on the feet. I think GM3 is like a pretty decent offensive fighter, despite the fact that he's slow as molasses and stiff as a board. You know, he's just like the least athletic looking guy who can kick you pretty hard to the body and, you know, throw a decent shot upstairs and throw plotting 1-2s that do a lot of damage and like seem to bother people and affect them. So I think the GM3, sneaky effective guy, just not as interested in betting into him at big chalk prices, because he is live to be nuked. You know, I never would have expected he died from Ian Heinisch. That one was really disappointing to me. I bet him very small. I know I'm going to get shit for this against Khamzat Chimaev. And then he gets one punched by Chimaev. I think that the real problem in that fight was that he took a fight, you know, 2 months or 3 months after being knocked out by Ian Heinisch. I think that otherwise it would have been a more interesting fucking up by Chimaev as opposed to the one that we got. I felt like if they had been grappling, that's where we could have seen something interesting from GM3, but had no chance on the feet with Chimaev, who's way faster and more athletic. So I had a lesson to learn there. I just think that Dustin Stolzfus, you know, I bet him against Daukaus at like a huge plus 260 ticket or something like that. And I still wasn't impressed altogether by his performance there. I thought that Daukaus left the door open for him and he still didn't capitalize in a way I wanted to see. So not interested in taking the dog shot on Stolzfus here. But I do think GM3 at a huge chalk price is probably tough to win on long term. John, how do you feel about this matchup?
I mean, I'm mostly a GM3 fan. I also bet him against Khamzat and Muradov, and I like. I don't know. I on the one hand, I think he should be value here. To be honest with you, like I think Stolzfus is one of the worst middleweights in the UFC, and I actually think Meerschaert at his best is probably like close to the top 15, certainly top 25. He should be better wherever the fight goes. He's the better striker. He is the better submission grappler. He's the better wrestler. The problem with GM3 is GM3 on any given night can compete with anybody in the division for periods of time, and he can also make competitive fights in fights that should not be competitive. I mean, just think about the Kevin Holland fight, right? He lost that fight. In hindsight, knowing the data points we have about Kevin Holland now, would you ever imagine that GM3 would lose to him? Not really. And it's kind of been a common theme throughout his career. You know, I'm not saying I'm not a narrative guy, and I'm not saying I expect him to underperform here, but he does enough stuff and puts himself in enough danger that I wouldn't be comfortable with a minus 220 ticket. That being said, I do think he's better everywhere. Like if you have particular conviction about GM3, I wouldn't even blame you. I just don't. I'm not really willing to trust, the variance he brings to the table, but I think he should handle this pretty much however he wants.
That all makes sense to me. And I actually have to side with Jack Attack here as well and just say I thought GM3 beat Holland. I thought he beat Anders as well. Because he's kind of like awkward looking and doesn't always wear a shot very well. He'll kind of like move around when he gets hit. I feel like that is not great for his judging optics, which is something to consider here. But he's also just such a proven finisher. That's the reason why I feel like those fights, I throw him out a little bit because the vast majority of the time he is finishing. And I still think based on the optics that I saw, he should have won those fights. And they were like close split decision territory. So I think if it goes to decision, it's a winnable fight. And I think the guy with way more finishing potential in this fight is got to be GM3. Gerald, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, so I actually kind of think there is value on GM3, and it's weird saying that because he's always been the underdog, like in his past couple of fights. The thing with Dustin Stolzfus that I really don't like, and I wanted to entertain him, but I started like watching some of his fights. It's just number one, it's a really low level, and then number two, he gets a contract off the Dana White Contender Series because the guy broke his arm. It wasn't him breaking it in a submission; it was him slamming his opponent, and he just landed very awkwardly on it. So then he gets his debut against Kyle Daukaus where he didn't look the best, but I mean, he looked undersized, if that makes like sense. He just looks so small for the middleweight division. I feel like GM3, I don't know, maybe he could just, take advantage of that. I like the more experienced veteran in the spot. And I'm saying that loving backing dogs, but I don't think that this is the right dog. Yeah, I don't know. I like Gerald Meerschaert to get it done, probably via submission.
I like that we're lining up so much today, boys, I must say, because that's exactly how I feel about this one. I feel like Stolzfus, he comes from Pennsylvania. I feel like he's probably just like wrestling background with some jiu-jitsu guy. That's like his go-to, it's like, so I don't think he's going to have tremendous success on the feet. And if he does start putting himself in grappling scenarios, GM3, pretty lethal guillotine, pretty dangerous guy. Ask Bartosz Fabinski, ask a couple other guys who put their head in the hole. I think Deron Wynn did the same thing. When they start getting tired, when they don't like the knees to the body and the kicks to the body, that's what they start doing. And I think that that's very live outcome here. He's pretty nasty from that position, and I expect Stolzfus to shoot. So that's going to be my prediction there. GM3 by sub, but I don't feel all that great about laying the chalk on it.
Yeah, I don't like the numbers on it as well. Like GM3 at this price tag, I'm just not the biggest fan of. But Dustin Stolzfus is not a guy that I'm willing to put my money on as a dog. So GM3 for the win for me.
Rock and roll. Rock and roll. So we can move right along. We are now onto the main card. Had some people asking about this fight before, and so I know people are fired up about this one in the chat. Just want to say, as we move to the main card, guys, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and like this video, get subscribed to the channel, go ahead and find my guests on social media, get subscribed to their channels as well. Means a lot to me when you do and when you support the guests. Appreciate that. So now we can move it right along. We've got a 145-pound fight. Two guys who have been absolute legends in the game. Two bangers, Darren Elkins, Cub Swanson. I think that this is a really well-matched fight. I think it should be good fun. But I feel like the recent form that we've seen from Darren Elkins has impressed me a little bit. Same old story from him. He just likes to get beat up a little bit to wake up for the fight. And then he starts to take over with his cardio, with his heart, and with his durability. And I feel like we've seen Cub Swanson, he's been pouring out the jug in some of these fights against guys he would have put away pretty easily, I think, back in the day. He used to be a guy that finished a lot of fights. Now his fights have been seeing the scorecards more and more often. And I think that the damage is just starting to add up a little bit for Cub. I feel like Darren wears it a little bit better. I feel like Cub has always been a little bit more fragile, a little bit more breakable in that sense. And so I feel like if the going gets tough in this fight, it's possible that Darren gets rocked early just because he's not very defensively sound. He's, I think, to use a word John used earlier, defensively void. That is a good word to describe Darren Elkins. But he also has a pretty consistent attitude, reliability to come forward and try and push grappling. And that's what makes Cub a little uncomfortable. And Cub's been dealing with a lot of injuries, a lot of surgeries, a lot of things that I think have slowed him down a little bit. Used to be a little bit more explosive and dynamic, unpredictable. Now I feel like he's a little bit more rote in his approach. And so Darren Elkins, this is a winnable fight for him. I don't think that he should be like a massive favorite here either. I just think that this should be a little bit more closely lined, in my opinion. Plus 185 on Darren Elkins seems quite wide. So I'll probably be getting involved on the Elkins side or passing here. John, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I don't really feel strong one way or another. I think stylistically it's a fairly strong matchup on paper for Swanson. He has, if you remove the Frankie Edgar fight from his sample, Cub really hasn't gotten takedown and held down by really anybody in his career. He always does he's a black belt, and he always does a fairly decent job working up when he gets taken down. So I do think that aspect of his game gets a little underrated because of that particular fight against Frankie Edgar. And on the feet, look, he should be the far better striker, no question about it. As you mentioned, Darren Elkins has no defense at all. He's very easy to hit. The blood optics are bad. But with that said, I do think Cub is visibly slowing. I bet him against Daniel Pineda, and that is a fight. In his prime, he would have walked through Pineda, and he won, but it was pretty sweaty. He obviously collapsed against Giga from that body kick, which you can't take too much from. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like he's not really the same fighter. And Elkins on the other side is a guy who will bite the mouthpiece, come forward, and he's going to attempt 10 to 15 takedowns. And that's kind of the thing, because Elkins is going to keep a high output. And even though I favor Cub, I think it's pretty likely that Elkins lands 3 to 4 takedowns here. And so if that's the case, do you really want to be in a fight with an older Cub being pushed into a dogfight where he's going to get taken down a bunch? It's really hard for me to justify that being minus 200. But on the other side, I don't really think Elkins is any great value. I see the path for him winning, but I still don't think it's very likely. I think Cub should be around minus 150 to minus 180. I think minus 200 is a bit extreme. But yeah, I can see why you would take the shot. I have no interest in this fight.
Fair enough. And Gerhard, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I do have interest in this fight, and I'm going to take Darren Elkins to get the job done. I like him as a dog. We got to remember as well, Cub Swanson is on. He's 2 fights removed from an ACL injury, and yeah, we didn't get to see him much against Giga Chikadze. I mean, he got put down pretty fast, but I don't know that even if it would have continued, that he.
That was a fun bet, by the way. Sorry, continue, Gerald. That was a really fun bet on Cub.
But yeah, so this is a interesting fight. I mean, you know, Cub Swanson's a guy. I mean, he's won 2 of his last 8 fights. I do think that we're kind of seeing him decline, whereas I do think Darren Elkins, I mean, he's shown us a little bit more dog at this stage of their careers. And I also went back and watched the Nate Landwehr fight, and if it wasn't for all that damn blood, I think he won that fight. And again, I like to watch my fights. I like to rewatch them without commentary. I hate the commentary just because it makes you think that a certain fighter is winning when really they're not. I like the shot on Elkins. I really do. So that's just kind of how I'm leaning this weekend. But it's tough. It's tough because I would bet either of these fighters at dog odds in this same matchup. If Cub was a dog, I'm betting him. You know, it's just pick your poison, you know?
Dude, I freaking bet Darren Elkins live plus 900 after round 2 against Nate Landwehr. I really thought he won that fight. So frustrating.
Exactly. I thought he won the fight just rewatching it. And I was like, man, that's a lot of blood, but that's just how Darren Elkins fights. He's used to getting beat up, and then, you know.
The first jab cuts him open.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. He's probably going to bleed this fight too. There should be a prop out for that.
Minus 600.
It'll be minus 1,000. Brutal. But anyway, guys, sorry about that delay, brief technical difficulties, but we are moving to a lightweight fight between Carlos Diego Ferreira and Mateusz Gamrot. This is arguably the best fight on the card, in my opinion. Really well-matched fight. You got CDF on the one hand, you know, kind of falling apart a little bit later in his career, not really making the weight class like he's supposed to, a little bit on the unprofessional side. But otherwise, you know, he still looked very good in that Gregor Gillespie fight. Transitioning well, moving well, created a lot of interesting scrambles. I think I had a small play on him in that fight. I think I had a small play on him against Beneil Dariush. And, you know, I'm probably just going to have to get off the train at this point. Granted, you get a little bit more desirable plus money here. I don't know that I have a good enough read on Carlos Diego to justify playing his lines at this point. And I think he's a very talented grappler. I thought that the Jared Gordon win was very impressive. Granted, it came after 2, you know, blasts to the nuts where he just fires off these mean inside kicks to the nuts that seemed to like completely get Gordon off his game. But in addition, like he then schoolyard bullies and puts the hand behind the back, which I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do in the UFC in all my years watching it. It was pretty embarrassing. So I think that, you know, CDF, if he's on top, is a problem for a lot of people. Gregor, everybody. I just think that in this fight, Mateusz is like very hard to, you know, I think he's going to be very hard to beat, period. I know that Guram was able to eat the decision on him. I think in part that was not that was a function of lack of preparation. I just think that this guy, he seemed dialed the fuck in his last 2 fights about what he needs to do to beat those specific opponents. And I do think CDF is a guy you can outlast, you can make break. I don't think he's a guy who likes getting into hard, drawn-out fights for 15 minutes. I think he likes to find the finish if he can. I don't think he wants to get into a dogfight scenario with Mateusz Gamrot here. And I think overall, Gamrot's probably going to be able to edge him out in a pretty close fight. That being said, you know, at a 65% indication against probably his toughest matchup to date, not something that I'm necessarily interested in betting into. You know, fight ends by submission would be a prop that I would at least take a look at the price on. Not even that it's the most likely outcome here, just that I think there's 2 potent submission finishers here. And if CDF gasses especially, I think that's when that becomes live for Gamrot. But this is an interesting fight to me on paper. 2 very talented guys, in my opinion. Interested to hear how you guys shake out on this. Also, 2 of the bigger camps in the space. ATT, you know, coming off a pretty brutal night, probably looking to get one back this weekend in the form of their young up-and-coming stud, Mateusz Gamrot. John, we'll kick it to you.
Yeah, I think the Gamrot love has gone way too far, to be completely honest with you. I'm not saying he's not a good prospect. I respect what he's done. I think his wrestling is quite good, especially his takedown ability. He's quite quick on his entries. His single leg is really nice, but he's not much of a control grappler, really. Like, he struggles to hold guys down. On the feet, he's an okay boxer. I mean, he's a solid boxer, I should say. I shouldn't say okay. He's a good boxer, but he is a little defensively susceptible. You know, when he's in the pocket, he's there to be cracked. And, you know, we didn't see it in the Holtzman fight, but Holtzman is kind of shot to shit, to be honest. And he was fighting a couple months removed from getting absolutely assassinated by Beneil Dariush. And so it's like, I'm not saying I put no value in that fight, but what we did see in that fight is he couldn't hold Holtzman down, just like he couldn't hold Guram down in the fight before. Yeah, he beat him, but again, Holtz looks done. The Stevens fight, Stevens is a 145er who couldn't really defend takedowns to begin with, who went up to 55 and got submitted right away. And now he's a favorite against Carlos Diego Ferreira. Like, that doesn't really make much sense. Yeah, I know Ferreira's on a 2-fight losing streak. Gregor Gillespie is one of the best grapplers ever, and that fight was fought at the highest pace that I've ever seen a fight fought at, grappling-wise. And even in that fight, when you consider how good Gregor is, and by the way, if you put Gregor and Gamrot in there grappling, I can almost guarantee you Gregor buries him, to be honest with you. And we saw Diego scramble with him fine. We saw him take his back. We saw him almost finish Gregor in the first round before he slowed down. And the fight before that, he went to a split decision with Beneil Dariush, who's one fight from the title. You know, Dariush is one of the best control games in the UFC. He's one of the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC. And he's, you know, look, Ferreira's fought an insane schedule. He wasn't held down consistently by Gregor Gillespie or Rustam Khabilov. And he's going to get held down by Gamrot? I really don't think so. And in terms of the striking, Ferreira is a great pressure fighter. He keeps an incredibly high pace. You know, we saw him break Mairbek Taysumov in the past. We saw him break Anthony Pettis. You know, and he hits pretty hard, to be honest with you. Like, the only guy to really box him up on the feet was Dustin Poirier. I don't know, man. Ferreira, in my mind, I don't think Gamrot's very live to outgrapple Ferreira. I think on the feet, it's close, but I trust Ferreira's power a bit more. I trust his pressure a bit more. I think Ferreira should be a favorite here, to be honest. I'll be betting him in the spot.
Interesting. Perhaps I need to look deeper into this matchup. Gerhard, how do you feel about this one, brother?
Yep, I'm going with CDF as well. I like him at dog odds. All of his losses are coming to the best in the division. And I say this thinking Gamrot could arguably be 20-0. I think he won that fight against Kutateladze, by the way. And Kutateladze even thinks that he lost the fight too. It was weird. I rewatched it and he was like, I didn't win that, but neither here nor there.
He was insistent that he didn't win. He kept telling you, I did not win that.
Yeah, out of respect, I was like, dude, just take it, bro. You won. But yeah, I don't know. I think Gamrot could arguably be 20-0, but I was hoping, knowing that maybe we could get like plus 180, plus 200 on CDF. But regardless,
we may.
I know, right? That's what I'm waiting on. I'm going to wait on it because I do feel like we're going to see a little bit of closing steam on Gamrot. I don't. CDF is
reach advantage too. Wow.
CDF is not like a joke on the mat. Like this guy, I mean, he's slick with his BJJ, and sure, he gassed out in his last fight, but man, he put up a really high pace. I mean, I could see a high pace here, but he's talking about how he's like riding his bike to Fortis MMA now, and how he's like been trying to address the cardio issues in the spot. I think a lot of people are sleeping on CDF. Yeah, he's on a 2-fight skid, but man, that guy's schedule has been tough, and he looks good until he doesn't. But yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting fight, and I like the dog in the spot.
Who's got the database with the American top team versus Fortis MMA statistics in it? That's what I want to see as well. I would be curious to know about some of those interplay, like team versus team statistics, because I do think that would probably favor ATT, but I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I feel like
Fortis has been having a little bit of a surgence lately.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of guys in the UFC. So I think CDF is like one of the poster boys for that gym. I think he's one of the best guys there. I think Gamrot is special, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to have to revisit a little bit. I just remember loving everything I've seen from him in terms of his attitude. The guy is like, gamer is a good nickname for him. He's a fucking fighter. Like, he's going to try to scrap you for the win. And I know that the Guram fight didn't show that. But I felt like it lit the fire under his ass that he needed. And so I'm interested to see how it shakes out if the going gets tough. Somebody mentioned that Gregor won the fight on heart alone, according to him. And I think that if this becomes a blood and guts war, that's where I expect Gamrot to win it, actually. But I do think that, who's the slicker, more technical guy? I think CDF in round one is definitely going to look like that. But I just think it becomes a fight about heart and toughness at some point. And CDF has kind of shown that he can be shown the door in that fight. So that for me is why I would slightly favor Gamrot. But I agree. I can see where you guys are coming from. And at the odds, I think it's a dog or pass situation. I think even based on my aggressive cap, I think it's slightly, slightly too wide in favor of my guy. So with that being said, John, you had one more thing here before we moved along?
No, you can go on. You can go on.
All right, rock and roll. So then the next fight we got up is a 135-pound fight. It seems like the UFC should have called this one, "Are you coming or going?" Because Rafael Assunção basically in a tough spot here. Ricky Simón, up and comer in the division, been set back by some of the better guys. Rob Font in a freaking nail biter fight where I feel like a couple tactical adjustments win that for Ricky Simón actually. And on top of that, Rafael Assunção kind of been underperforming expectations a little bit lately. Thought that the Cody Garbrandt fight was a winnable fight for him, or a fight where he would compete a little bit better. Was getting leg kicked and outboxed in the first round. Then tried to get inside a little bit more, committed to the kicking game, got a little bit more aggressive along the fence line, and ended up getting himself knocked out. So I think that he has definitely slowed down a bit, which is my biggest concern here. And I was talking to Dan Levy earlier, and that was basically what we were coming back to. It's just like Rafael Assunção a couple of years ago, you'd probably feel pretty good about him winning this fight, and certainly feel good about him being valued at plus 235 or whatever it is. But I think at this point, the ship may have sailed a little bit on him, in terms of his future in the division. What is he, 38, 39 years old now, in one of the younger divisions on average in the UFC. I think that doesn't bode well for him. So I kind of like Ricky Simón to get the win here. But I don't have a tremendous interest in betting Ricky Simón at the minus 265 price tag this weekend. John, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Like 5 years ago, if you gave me Rafael Assunção plus 230 against Ricky Simón, that's a huge bet, right? Just look at the guys that they've fought and beaten. Assunção, his last 3 losses were to Corey Sandhagen, Cody Garbrandt, and Marlon Moraes. He's got victories over Marlon Moraes and Aljamain Sterling and Rob Font and Pedro Munoz. And then you have Ricky Simón, by the way, I think Ricky Simón is quite good. I think he's kind of underrated. His boxing has been improving. He is an absolutely elite wrestler in terms of securing takedowns. Very hard to sub on the takedowns. Does a good job of passing when he enters. But he doesn't have a great control game. Assunção is a very responsible defensive grappler. He's faced good wrestlers in the past. He's certainly the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. In terms of the striking, historically, he's been the better striker as well. He's more technical. He's defensively, he's tremendous. But as you said, he's 39. And it's like, where is he? Last time we saw him was getting, basically shot by Cody Garbrandt. He hasn't been back since. I don't know where he's at. The one thing I know Simón is going to be reliable to do is force a crazy pace on him. Do I trust that Assunção can keep that pace at this point in his career? Not really. I kind of think Simón just deserves to be the favorite on age alone. He has a lot more of his athleticism still remaining. But with that said, will I bet Assunção? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about it, though. Because it's like, unless you tell me for a fact Assunção is shot, this line doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, he's certainly not minus 270 skill-wise against Rafael Assunção. But so yeah, I mean, I might bet Assunção. I think for me, it's dog or pass fight. Like, I think Assunção is, look, he's been one of the division's best for years and years and years, and he's a huge step up for Ricky Simón. So yeah, I would favor Simón slightly, but I think the line is certainly wide.
I have to agree with you there, and I'm seeing as high as plus 240 on the market for him. So yeah, it seems like there is a little bit of action coming in the way of Ricky Simón, and I encourage people, keep doing that. As much as you'd like. Maybe if we can get plus 250, I'll get involved myself. I think that would be an interesting spot. Gerhard, how do you feel about this one?
I just feel like Simón's just the younger fighter here. We know what we're going to get out of him. Rafael Assunção is just kind of on the decline, and thought about backing him as a dog, but I'm not too sure. You know, it's the age, the knockout, the layoff, there's just questions kind of regarding him. I think Simone has just looked, he's looked pretty good in his last couple of fights. I mean, he did get knocked out by Faber, and I don't see a Sunset with that same power, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting fight. I'm just gonna watch it as a fan, but I'm not really gonna have a bet or a side in this spot. I will root for an upset any day of the week, but I just think Simone's just better everywhere at this stage of their careers. Not back then, but yeah, right now, I just feel like Simone is just, you got to look at career trajectories, so that's just how
Absolutely. They don't fight on paper, and their resumes don't go out and fight each other either. It's two guys on Saturday night, and one of them is going to be significantly older, and that's just a predictive factor. So you got to take it in mind when you're capping these fights. That being said, we can move along to another one of the hotly contested bouts on the card. Should be an interesting one. Amanda Lemos taking on Angela Hill, and the line is very, very wide here. Opened a lot closer. I think it was like minus 225 range when it opened for Lemos. It's been bet all the way to minus 400, across most of the market here, minus 350 in certain places. And that seems just a bit wide to me, I'm going to be honest. I think that Amanda Lemos is a better fighter than Angela Hill, probably. But I also think that, there's still questions about her cardio as far as I'm concerned. I thought that she slowed down a little bit in the Inoue fight. She is, pretty prone to getting pushed up against the fence, doesn't have the greatest ability to circle off, doesn't have the greatest head position against the fence either, which I think could be a problem against somebody like Angela Hill, who likes to be that kind of Thai style, head press and get the clinch. I think overall, the volume is going to be coming from Angela Hill more often than it's going to be coming from Lemos here, unless Lemos is like the first person to stop her with strikes early. And I don't think that that's like a 0% chance. I just don't think it's all that high. I think this is a step up in competition for Lemos. And we've seen Lemos have like success landing good heavy shots and gassing herself out before. It was her UFC debut. It was against Leslie Smith. It was up 2 weight classes. All those things are true. But, I don't see why that style of fight could not play out again. It wasn't like she got stopped in that fight because she got dropped or she got hurt. She literally just had no energy left to keep going. And so she gets like standing positional TKO against the cage. I don't think that that's outside the realm for Angela Hill. She's not like the world's biggest stopping threat, but we've seen Angela Hill unload with like a 10-piece combination before when somebody looks pretty winded against the fence. So I think Amanda Lemos should probably fuck her up, in all likelihood, but she doesn't grapple proactively, which is like one of the primary ways of getting to Hill. And she also is like not going to outstrike her to the point where she kills her in the first, in my opinion. And so that means I don't see how she justifies the price at minus 400. And I'll probably have to take a small shot on Angela Hill at plus 310. So interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. Hate to go against my man Lucrative's cash cow and his favorite fighter because he's a smart guy too. But I think that, it's one thing at the opening price. I could see why people want to get involved on Lemos early before the line moves. I think it was predictable that the line would go out in her direction. But I think at this point, you're going to see a sharp market buyback on the price because it's just a little bit too much guesswork, I think, for a girl who hasn't done that much work in the UFC, especially down at this new division. John, how do you feel? I think you have a bet on this one.
Yeah, I bet Angela Hill. Honestly, I'm not saying I favor Hill or anything like that, but I do think Lemos is probably the most overrated fighter in the UFC at the moment in terms of what people think her trajectory is. I see people talking about, Joanna wouldn't want to fight her. It's like, are you guys fucking crazy? Do you know what Joanna would do to this woman? It's just like, look, her physicality is off the charts. You touched on it a bit earlier in the show, Liam, that sometimes you see an angle in a WMMA fight and it's just like, oh, fuck, they might have been technically better, but I didn't get the physicality angle. And that's kind of what you have with Lemos. She's definitely got, in terms of like physicality pound for pound, it's one of the best in all of WMMA. She's obviously a big hitter, but like go back a couple fights ago, she was a dog to Mizuki Inoue. She closed as a dog there. And I think people kind of remember that fight wrong. Like, she dropped her in the first round to win that round. Rounds 2 and 3 were quite close. Mizuki, when she was able to get into the pocket, was actually having a good amount of success in the boxing. She was able to hold her up against the fence a lot. I scored the fight for Lemos myself, but it was a very close fight. You know, if you recall, the commentators at the end of the fight, Cruz and Anik are talking about, I don't know how the judges are going to see this fight, et cetera, et cetera. Then she goes and fights Lavinia Souza, who's terrible and no longer in the UFC, knocks her out in a round, and then fights Montserrat Ruiz, who also is not a UFC level fighter, and knocks her out in a round. And now here we are against Angela Hill, who has 18 career UFC fights, who's fought in, you know, some of the best girls in the world, and she's a minus 400 favorite. I think you nailed it again, Liam, with the grappling aspect. Like, if Lemos was someone who was going to come out here, attempt 6-8 takedowns, I would say to myself, well, maybe she can cover this price. I still think Angela Hill's bottom game is quite questionable, but on the feet, I don't know, man. Like, Angela Hill is not a bad striker. You know, she's a pretty good striker for her career. Like, would anybody really be surprised if Angela Hill just outstrikes her easily? Because I wouldn't be surprised by it. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, and I do think Lemos is a lock to be landing the harder shots. She also throws low kicks, which could impact Hill a good bit. But I don't know. I think this line's crazy. Like, I just have to trust Hill's experience. She's been in there with people that hit as hard as her. You know, she went 3 rounds with Jessica Andrade and put her in trouble for a bit as well. I don't know. I don't see how Lemos can be minus 400, to be completely honest with you. It makes no sense to me. I went small on Hill just in case, you know, I did think Hill looked washed against Torres a bit, and in case that's the case. But I think this is pretty much an auto bet, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from completely, and I agree. Monk says the same thing. Hill did not look great against Torres at all, and I agree. She didn't look great in that spot, but this seems like more of a style analog to people that she has beaten or competed with in the past. And I do think that, you know, even that Claudia Gadelha fight, I know that, you know, the joke is that Angela Hill thinks she won every fight, and she didn't. But I think the Claudia Gadelha fight is one of the arguable ones where she might have. And I think in addition, you know, she did hurt Claudia in that fight down the stretch, not because she's a bigger hitter than Claudia, but because she sticks around. You know, we've seen 5-round performances from Angela Hill, and we just haven't really seen that from Amanda Lemos. So I think you have to really take a little bit of a hope and a prayer that she gets it done early, or that she has shown some improvement in the cardio. Now, the only thing I will add to go against my own point is that her body looked different at 135. She is probably on good steroids. She hangs out with Waleed Ismail. God bless. All those guys are you know, doing some kind of supplementation, it would appear. And on top of that, you know, I think that her body looks different because she's doing more cardio. I think that she like lost body fat percentage from the time that she was at 35. And I think that that could pay dividends. It did seem to help in the Inoue fight, but it didn't look like stellar cardio. It wasn't like blow you away cardio. It was just survive 15 minutes. And I think that Angela Hill, with more activity, with less reliance on offensive grappling as her path, I think could be important, because Inoue was like putting herself in position to get taken down, overextending, and Lemos has good like reactive throws, which, you know, I think she might come from a judo background or something. I would have to think because she does like step through on throws, I would say at a higher level than most WMMA fighters, can really hip toss with some efficacy. Did it hard to Leslie Smith in her UFC debut before losing that fight. So I was impressed by that, going back and watching the tape. But we can move along, guys. We got a co-main event here at 170 pounds. Bilal,
did Gerhard break down the fight?
Oh, Gerhard, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Hey, you guys honestly broke it down pretty much exactly. I'm just going to mirror everything that you guys pretty much said. I think at a minus 410 price tag, I would want my fighter to get it done inside round 1. Does Lemos do that? I'm not exactly too sure. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the value is on Angela Hill on this spot. I'm interested in a bet on her, but I mean, she also hasn't looked the best either in her last couple of fights. But it's just, you know, it's betting against the odds in this spot. So I don't know. I would take the shot on Angela Hill, just, you know, via experience, via resume, cardio as well, her pace. I do expect her to be the one moving forward in the later rounds. I do think that she puts together some solid combos, and I think she can last 15 minutes with Lemos. And at minus 410, I don't know that I really want to lay that price tag with somebody that I don't think gets it out of round 1. I don't think Angela Hill is going to get knocked out this fight, you know? So I don't know. We'll see, though.
I definitely get where you're coming from as well, Gerhardt. And the last thing I'll leave people with on this fight is just that this is a slight age gap. It's like a year and a half or something like that. I feel like people have this idea that Lemos is like the young, fresh contender. Angela Hill is like old and washed. And I think that Lemos has less miles, but by how much? She's only within a year and a half in terms of age. And I don't think that in WMMA, the age is quite as relevant a factor necessarily. So man, that is at least an interesting look to me. Everybody seems to be thinking she's like the young, fresh prospect in the division. It's like it's now or never for her in a lot of respects as well. So I think that should be a good fight, and we get to find out, where both women's career is heading ultimately. But in the co-main event, we've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad. I think that this is a pretty fun fight because it's going to showcase what both guys are good at. Bilal Muhammad is going to try and come forward, going to try and get a single leg, going to try and put hands on Stephen Thompson and do his thing. And Stephen Thompson is going to try and dance around him, move laterally, and connect with the bigger and more important shots. And ultimately, Bilal is known as being a durable guy, and he is a very durable guy. He's taken some ass whippings, but he's also been put down by some power strikers in the past. I think that was a really bad knockout against Vicente Luque. And he's been put on the, the ice skates before as well. I think that even Leon had him, a little bit on skates before that fight was called off early, unfortunately. So I think that this is Jack Attack with an interesting stat poll. Wonderboy 0-3 against Rufus Sport. Interesting. So that's at least something to keep in the back of your mind. Anthony Pettis did seem to fluke him just a little bit, but did put in, attritional work with the leg kicks that ended up paying dividends. So maybe we see Bilal enter with a similar game plan. Just don't think he has the dynamism to pull it off like Anthony Pettis did in that fight. I think that Wonderboy, barring a fall off of his athleticism that's drastic here, should be able to bank at least 2 rounds against Bilal Muhammad or find a chance to hurt him through this fight. I think he just has the more impactful punches, more impactful kicks, and it will pay dividends over the course of 15 minutes. How do you feel about this fight, John?
Well, first of all, on the feet, I think Bilal Muhammad presents no issues for Stephen Thompson whatsoever. Unless he just falls off a cliff right away, right now from one fight to this one. But look, the bottom line is for Muhammad, he's a great technical fighter. The problem is he just lacks athleticism. Wonderboy is one of the best strikers in the history of the division. I don't really think at distance he's going to have any trouble keeping Bilal off him and countering his face off. Honestly, if it was just a kickboxing match, I'd probably have Wonderboy at minus 1,000. I think the gap is literally about that wide here. In terms of the fight itself, look, like I said, I think Wonderboy has him pretty much checkmated standing. Could Bilal grapple him and win? I guess. I bet Burns against Thompson pretty confidently, though. And to be honest with you, Burns is a pretty good wrestler. He's an athletic freak with an elite top game. Thompson did a better job working up than I expected that fight and stuffing the takedowns initially. I know Bilal doesn't have Burns' level of chain wrestling, and I know he doesn't have the top game Burns does. I'm not saying he can't hold Wonderboy down conceivably. Sure, he could. I just don't. I don't expect him to. Wonderboy actually defends takedowns okay. I'd be surprised if he landed more than 1 to 2 takedowns here, and I'd be surprised if he's able to control him for a full round a bit. Again, I thought Wonderboy did a decent job working up against Burns. Burns is just, the things Burns were doing to him to keep him down are just so much more high level than anything he's going to see from Bilal here. And like I said, on the feet, I think it's all Wonderboy. As to whether I'll bet it, I might bet Wonderboy. I don't really want to bet him over minus 200, but the line keeps coming in. And if it comes in under minus 200, I might take the poke here.
That makes perfect sense to me. And I was just trying to look at the prop market because, Wonderboy doesn't really win all that many fights by knockout, despite being a better striker. But I do think that this is a fight where he's live to get one. And right now, plus 350 is the best market available. So not, a tremendous plus number. Maybe if that goes up to plus 400, I'd consider the poke. But I do think that is a live outcome here and something that I might look to take advantage of if I can find a better number. Gerhard, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, so I actually think Stephen Thompson kind of justifies his price tag as a -200 favorite. I actually had a hot take for this fight. I do think Stephen Thompson gets it done inside round 1, and I know this is going to be super unpopular. I don't expect anybody to agree with me. I actually expect a lot of disagreements, but Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's a very high-level striker. He does have good lateral movement. I don't see Bilal's going to have to eat some shots, trying to get this fight in the clinch. I can see him eating knees in the clinch. I do not rate his wrestling as highly as Gilbert Burns. There's a lot of Bilal Muhammad's a weird fighter. He's good. He's a good overall fighter, but he's not great at just one specific thing. I think as long as this stays standing, I really think Stephen Thompson I see a head kick KO. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I don't know. It's just a feeling. And, I don't like betting on feelings, but I do like betting on odds. And I do think it sticks out to me. I know we haven't seen a finish from him since 2016, but I think Leon Edwards really kind of drew, a plan to beat this guy. I don't know. I really like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in the spot. I like the favorite, and I'm interested in a prop play here.
Interesting.
Yo,
So,
hold on. Jack Attack.
Yep.
Don't you ever compare Ignacio Bahamondes to Wonderboy Thompson. What the actual fuck is that? What?
You know what? I get where he's coming from in the spinning shit, but I know what you mean. Not the same level. Ignacio Bahamondes cashed me that plus 150. I think it was. Big blessings to him. That was a fun way to cash a ticket, let me tell you. But I think that overall, you've got our opinion on this one. Like I said, some sharp guys in the chat, maybe looking at that dog poke, looking at the Rufo Sport angle here. They've had success against this guy, but I think Wonderboy is probably going to have another ride in the victor's column, and I think he's going to get it on Saturday night. So I like Wonderboy in that fight, and it looks like we've got panel consensus that the KO may be live as well. So we can move right along. We've got the main event of the evening. We still got 27 people in here rocking live with us. Appreciate each and every one of you guys who stuck it out to the main event. If you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, get subscribed to the channel. You know the deal. But we've got a heavyweight clash. We've got two guys who have been money-making machines for people in the UFC. Derrick Lewis, if you have backed him as a moneyline underdog, you have been sitting very pretty so far throughout his UFC run. He does not always get love at the betting market because he's got a pretty one-dimensional game, but in his one-dimensional game, he finds a lot of success. And he's, one of the things that's unique about him is he's able to keep that power late. A lot of people, they're big KO threats. They're KO threats early, and then they sort of taper off in terms of their efficacy over the course of a fight. Whereas, Derrick Lewis just seems to have this store of, ridiculous power that he could tap into at any point in a fight, but he only does it 8 times. So you've got 25 minutes or whatever it is on the clock. If you're a Derrick Lewis backer, you basically got 8 to 10 opportunities where he's going to swing with everything. He might advance with a 5-punch combination. He might advance with a jumping round kick. But then he's going to take, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and he's going to recompose. He's going to take some deep breaths. He's going to move around a little bit and wait for you to do something. And I think that that's a little bit tough against somebody with the hand speed of Kyle Daukaus. I think Daukaus, his strength and his ability in the UFC so far has been exploiting the fact that, most heavyweights are slow, stationary, static targets that he can move in and out on and touch them with the hands. The problem is, sometimes he starts touching people with the hands and he'll stay there and try and land like a 10-piece combination because he's feeling himself. And that's the kind of thing that will get you nuked by Derrick Lewis. So I think that, comforting to hear that he's no longer a full-time police officer for this fight. But that seems like it only took effect, 2 weeks prior. So I think overall, this is a big step up in competition for Daukaus. It's not Rodrigo Nascimento where you can feel confident laying the chalk because the guy's not very good. There are legitimate skills on the other side with Derrick Lewis. And I've heard a lot of takes about the grappling here. And I think that is a outside possibility, but it's pretty low percentage in my view. Derrick Lewis, a hard guy to grapple, exhausting to try to grapple him. And the guys that have tried to grapple him, he's very good at, his vision is impressive. He saw that Curtis was going to shoot, read it, blocked with the hand and fired the uppercut behind it. And Curtis was like dead on arrival well before he fell backwards there. Perfect timing from Derrick. And so, yeah, Ciryl Gane made him look really bad with a massive reach advantage and a height advantage and a speed advantage and, probably just as much striking experience. So I think it was like a awkward matchup for Derrick where he had very little chance to succeed. A lot of his games predicated on somebody doing something stupid. And Chris Daukaus, who's a little bit younger in the game, who's a little bit closer to his regional career, he's more prone to do something stupid, in my opinion, than Ciryl Gane, who's fighting in championship level fights for a reason. So I think that, this is maybe a slip on a banana peel type fight for Daukaus, but overall, I like his hand speed. I think that Derrick Lewis is a little bit breakable. I think that he doesn't like when somebody is faster in the pocket. I think Daukaus would be really wise to mix up the body work here. Derrick hates getting touched to the body. And if you do it like 4 or 5 times pretty committedly, I think that he'll fold up shop. I think that that's a lot of what happened in the JDS fight. JDS was just insistent about punching and kicking in the body, and he can never really recover from those shots. So I think that we've also seen Derrick in extended fights. A lot of people are talking about he's going to be live down the stretch. And I think that that's true. I just think that he's also live to completely gas down the stretch and do nothing because that's what happened against Mark Hunt, where, he just, everything he does is 100%. It's a jumping switch kick. That's 100%. It's a massive low kick where he tries to take you off your feet. That's 100%. A bus driver uppercut, 100%. And so I just think that if Kyle Daukaus throws at 75% and doesn't get nuked, he's going to absolutely beat the shit out of Derrick Lewis for as long as the fight lasts. I just don't want him to, get overexcited, sell out for a finish, and just get nuked on the way in, which is a live possibility. Derrick is the best guy I've ever seen at disguising whether or not he's really hurt, because a lot of guys have rushed in to finish him. JDS almost got killed. Thought he had him so badly hurt with the body kick that he runs in with both hands down, and Derrick just explodes with the overhand right. I think that's a live possibility here. So, John, I'm going to kick it over to you. This fight's been giving me freaking fits trying to figure it out. Daukaus is my boy, but I think he's got his work cut out for him, and I'm not in a rush to bet against Derrick Lewis.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. Chris Daukaus, I don't think grappling is going to happen, to be honest. He's never submitted anybody, to be honest. I know he's a black belt, but even going back and watching his tape, he's never tried to proactively grapple. So I think the odds that he's going to try to do that here and potentially just gas himself doing it aren't very likely, because that's another interesting fact about Chris Daukaus is he's never been out of round 2 in his career. Is this going to be the spot where it happens? Something tells me probably not, but it is something to monitor. In terms of the fight, look, I don't rate Derrick Lewis that highly skill-wise. I don't think anybody really does. But the thing is, I think the thing people keep looking past when it comes to Lewis is at heavyweight, where guys are so defensively exposed, and with the kind of power he carries, it is a tremendous equalizer. He has a near 3% knockdown rate, which is actually insane. If you projected him to land 40 strikes, you'd almost have to project the finish. That's how crazy we're talking about numbers-wise that is. He's obviously, for a man that big, a great athlete. But, with that said, he doesn't really have many MMA skills, as I mentioned. I think he's kind of fragile. I don't think he's a great grappler, even though he'll stand right up if you take him down. So, in terms of skill, I think it's all Daukaus. But in terms of the line, I don't know, man. I bet Shamil against Daukaus. And look, obviously, Daukaus won that fight. But, Daukaus gets hit. He's not someone who doesn't get clipped. He's just not afraid to get clipped. The thing is, against Derrick Lewis, he's one of those guys who, you should be afraid to get clipped against. I just kind of think, I guess I kind of think there is maybe value on Lewis, or the line's more or less right. I said I do think Daukaus is the more skilled guy, but he's hittable, and Lewis hits like an absolute truck. So it's Derrick Lewis is a 75% win rate in the UFC. How many times do we have to go through this dance where we talk about how he's worse than somebody and then watch him knock them out, I'm probably not going to bet this fight. I guess I'm leaning Lewis just because I do kind of think the market may be overvaluing Daukaus' KOs a bit, and Lewis is just a lot more tested, but I don't feel very good about that.
Fair enough. And that all makes sense to me. The only thing I would just add as I kick it over to Gerhard is it's a very limited sample size for Chris Daukaus so far in the UFC. But right now he's registering a 7.1% knockdown rate on the bumps that he has been fighting. So, and we say bums affectionately on this show with all due respect. And how do you feel about this one, Gerhard?
Yeah, this is a super difficult fight to break down because I feel like Daukaus is going to be the minute winner here. He's going to win a majority of the fight until he's not. He's either going to get put lights out or he's going to do exactly what Cyril Gane did and just touch him up against the cage, just put the pressure on him. But saying that, Daukaus comes and there's a universe where I feel like Derrick Lewis has more cardio than Chris Daukaus. I know I sound crazy saying that, but this guy breathes extremely heavy after round one, even looking for finishes. Like he looks for the finish a little too much. His style's not point fighting. And I feel like that could be his downfall in this spot where he just, unloads the gas tank looking for that finish. And then Derrick Lewis just hits him with the bomb in the later rounds. But like I said, I do think Daukaus wins a majority of the time, but I just don't, it's such a difficult fight to break down. I think the value is on Lewis, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Daukaus is, this is a big step up in competition for him, and I don't know that he gets Lewis out of there like a lot of people are suggesting, because that is a lot of his win equity is by knockout, and we haven't seen him past second, third, or even past the first round, I believe, in the UFC. Or no, I'm sorry, he did beat Shamil in round 2, but even then I was worried about him. He gets touched
to rob me of money, by the way. I had him in round 1 there, and he knocked him out clean in round 1. I was like stunned that they didn't stop that fight.
Yeah, Shamil
so he had to knock him out twice. I know, poor bastard, dude. I was like, "What? Who wants to see that?" Like the guy, it's clearly done. But I think that overall, man, that was the fight for me that gave me a little bit of pause because Daukaus does, like John said, he gets hit. I just think that Derrick gets hit, Daukaus gets hit. Daukaus is 4 years younger and has been knocked out less frequently, and so in a car crash type fight, I think maybe the weight of Derrick Lewis is ultimately what makes the difference. He's a lot bigger than Daukaus, and so he might just be able to crash him with more force. But I think that if it comes down to speed, I think Daukaus could just like lap him with punches and kind of move around him. So that's where it becomes an interesting fight to me. I think the approach is critical here. But Martinez, BJJ, these guys have been coming up with pretty damn good game plans and winning a lot of UFC fights at close odds ranges as well. Sean Brady, Pat Sabatini, a couple of these guys now. And so that's the thing that makes me not want to line up in front of them either. I think that they have a smart gym. I think that they have credible guys training there. And we've actually seen physical transformation from Chris. Like he was 255 pounds when he fought, I forget, Zoe or whatever the guy's name from the Philly regional. So it's like, yeah, he got knocked out in that fight. The guy looks like Derrick Lewis. Like a lot of things that, could line up there, but I don't think that it's the same Daukaus. Like he looks physically way different. I think he's leaned into his advantages, which is speed and athleticism in the division. So I'd like to see him work the body, stay outside, touch the leg kicks. Like Derrick said, he expects him to approach this fight like Gane. That's what I want. I want him to approach the fight like Gane, who wasn't in a rush, who just picked him apart. And that's how you make Derrick quit, is not by rushing in. That's what he wants. It's just, all right, firefight, both of us swing. I think instead, if Daukaus just takes a measured approach to this fight and tries to pace himself over 2 rounds even, I think that gives him a much better chance to win it than trying to take out Lewis in round 1. But I had staggered bets on Daukaus inside the distance, Daukaus round 1, and then Daukaus rounds 1 and 2. So we still covered our bases last time. In this fight, if I was to prop sprinkle, it would probably be Daukaus round 1 and 2 and Daukaus rounds 1, 2, 3 for the additional insurance. I think those are both above plus 210. And, I think that's a lot of the win equity for Daukaus, if I'm being fair. I don't know that Daukaus has a 25-minute gas tank at the pace he fights. And I do think that, Derrick, one shot from Derrick in round 4 is still enough to absolutely kill Daukaus. And so I'm wishing him the best of luck. But he's got his hands full, and in his first main event, could be big pressure. Derrick Lewis mentioned that last time he was in Houston, out in front of a bunch of fans, that's like an energy draining situation. Whereas in the Apex, it's like a sparring match. And for Derrick Lewis, who's already got a ton of experience, I feel like that only could benefit him. It seemed like Curtis was shitting his pants when they were fighting in the Apex. He wanted to be best friends. He's like, hey, let's touch gloves again. I'm so sorry every time he fouled him. And I want to see Chris be a little more mean because I think that's what gets to Derrick. When Derrick thinks you're a nice guy, he's been to jail. He's not afraid of hurting somebody. When when Curtis is asleep on the ground, he's giving him the DX suck it sign while he's like, like it was harrowing. Derrick Lewis doesn't give a flying fuck. Like, he will do a dirty move. He'll hit you on the break. He'll say he got poked in the eye when he didn't. He will take any advantage. And if you're going to place a wager, I got to say, that's something I like from my guys is they don't care about the rules. And I don't think Derrick Lewis cares about the rules. I don't think he cares about making fans or friends or anything else. I do think he's a ruthless competitor and he wants money. So that's a pretty good guy to invest in long-term as well. Just a complete savage. So I think we covered this one, guys, top to bottom, hit on a lot of spots, some underdogs we like, some favorites we like, some props that we think we might be able to take advantage of. And I think that overall, you guys can go ahead and take a look at your own feelings, compare it to what we've got here, and hopefully come up with a good way to target these fights. Last card of the year, hoping to finish out strong, plus 30 units or so on the year. For me so far, sitting at about a 6% ROI, trying to bump that up here on the last event. Plus 8 units at UFC 269. So we're trying to keep the ball rolling here with some momentum. Appreciate John and Gerhardt for coming on, breaking down these fights, and want to give them an opportunity to let you know where you can find their great work moving forward and anything they got to get off their chest before we get out of here tonight. So, John, I'll kick it to you first, my friend.
Yeah, guys, you can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox below and on the Club and Sub podcast every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. So in about an hour, 15 minutes from now on the Club and Sub podcast YouTube channel, which I believe is in the description below. So check that out, please. And Liam, thanks for having me on. I had a blast. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It was great to meet you. And hopefully one day we'll get in person. I think you're a Jersey guy. I'm a New York guy. So we'll get down to the sports book one day and hopefully win some money. Hopefully we'll have better luck than me or than you and Andrew have had so far. But thank you very much for coming on, man. I really appreciate having you on. No problem. It was a great conversation. Sure. Gerhardt, my man, let the people know where they can find you. And thank you once again for coming on, my friend.
I really appreciate you bringing me on today, Liam. It was really fun breaking down these fights. You guys can find me at YBB Sports Data. I'm just the guy who I like the MMA fights side of things, but the logo is actually ran by 3 people. So if you want to DM me or discuss fights, I'm at Gerhardt94 on Twitter. And yeah, we could talk fights all day. I love fighting.
Awesome. I love it. So guys, there you have it. We've got UFC Vegas 45 in the books. I hope that each and every one of you guys have enjoyed this breakdown, and I hope that you guys enjoy the card. God bless you all. Good luck with any and all action that you take. Please bet legally and responsibly. Thank you to my sponsor, PrizePicks, that makes this show possible. If you guys want to get involved in the fun, go ahead and check out the link below, PrizePicks.com. Use promo code Liam for 100% deposit match up to $100. Make sure you go tune in to the Club and Sub podcast. It's a great show. It's going to be going on tonight. John is going to be there. Lots of great, smart guys come on that program. Absolutely essential viewing. So go ahead and check that out as well. And have a wonderful rest of your evening, guys. I will be back tomorrow breaking down a little bit more of the action, a little bit more in-depth on the tape. Me and my man, Notorious Picks, going to be coming at you tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. If you're not already, get subscribed to the channel. God bless you all. Good luck and have a great night. We'll see you then.